Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf has taken part in the 8th meeting of the Arab Ministerial Small Committee in charge of international action to face up to the illegal Israeli policies. The Under-Secretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, has said that the UN peacekeeping operations need greater political support and resources to carry out their tasks in complete safety. The UN envoy for the peace process in the Middle East, Tor Westland, has condemned the Israeli airstrikes that hit a humanitarian zone in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Well, those were the headlines, and now the news in details. Many heads of state and government have congratulated the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, for his re-election for a new term, reiterating their desire to strengthen the already existing relations and bonds of friendship between their countries and Algeria. The details with Asya Bikar.
The custodian of the two holy mosques, the king of the brotherly country, Saudi Arabia, Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman congratulated the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, for his re-election for a second term. Meanwhile, the Vice President, Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and the UAE Vice President, Deputy Prime Minister and Chairman of the Presidential Court, His Highness Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, also congratulated President Abdelmadjid Tebboune for his re-election. The Emir of the State of Kuwait, His Highness Sheikh Mish'al Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, sent a message of congratulations to the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, in which he extended his wishes for success, achievement, health, and well-being, wishing further development to the good relations between the two brotherly countries. For his part, the President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Mr. Mohammed Ould Sheikh Al Ghazawani, congratulated his brother, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, for the trust that has been renewed in him by the Algerian people, extending his wishes for success and achievement in his presidential term, while highlighting the solidity of relations between Algeria and Mauritania. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, also received a phone call from his Somalian counterpart, Mr. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, during which he congratulated him for his re-election as President. The President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron, for his part, extended his warmest congratulations to the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, for his re-election as President of the Republic, stating that relations with Algeria remain exceptional in all areas, notably security and counter-terrorism. Meanwhile, the Sultan of Oman, His Highness Haytham bin Tariq, congratulated the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, for his re-election as President, wishing him success and achievement and wishing the Algerian people more progress and prosperity and development of relations between Algeria and Oman.
The President of Italy, Sergio Mattarella, has congratulated the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, for his re-election for a new term. The President of the Republic of Cuba, for his part, Miguel Diaz-Canel, congratulated on his behalf and on behalf of the Cuban government and people, President Tebboune, for his re-election for a new term. For his part, the President of Western Sahara and Secretary General of the Polisario Front, Brahim Ghali, has also congratulated his Algerian counterpart, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, for his re-election as President of Algeria. The Sahrawi President praised the steadfast principled stance that the Algeria of freedom and dignity has long adopted, supporting the just and legitimate struggle of the Sahrawi people for freedom and independence in facing common challenges, including the policies of the Moroccan occupying state, which does not hesitate to drag the region into a dilemma of tension and conflict, as he put it. Now, the Secretary General of the General Union of Algerian Workers, UGTA, Ammar Takjout has congratulated President Abdelmadjid Tebboune on the occasion of his re-election for a new presidential term, affirming that this deserved victory will allow him to continue to lead the country towards further progress and prosperity. Meanwhile, different political parties and bodies congratulated the President of the Republic for his re-election, notably the Movement of National Entente, the Al-Wasi Siyasi Party, the Karama Party, and the National Organization of Economic Development, among others. The candidate for the presidential elections of the Movement of the Society for Peace, Abdulali Hassani Sharif, filed today an appeal before the Constitutional Court against the provisional results announced on Sunday by the head of the Independent National Authority for Elections, Mr. Mohammed Sharfi. In a press conference, Mr. Hassani Sharif said that the National Independent Authority for Elections provided unclear figures that contradict the minutes obtained by the provincial delegations of the Independent National Authority for Elections. This is Radio Algeria International. More details and more news with Majid Mila.
Hello, Jamal. The Minister of the Interior, Local Authorities and Town and Country Planning, Ibrahim Merad, has announced the adoption of emergency measures to contain damage caused by the rains in the southwestern province of Bishar. This was announced during a meeting chaired by the minister that was devoted to the assessment of the impact of the latest violent rains that hit the province. The meeting brought together several government members, including the Minister for National Solidarity, the Family and the Women Condition, Kautar Krikou, the Minister for Public Works and Basic Infrastructure, Lakhdar Rakhroukh, as well as the local authorities. During this meeting, the Governor of Bishar made a presentation on the measures taken to protect citizens and their property and to deal with the impact of the rainfall. On this occasion, the minister also stressed the need to remedy the situation by identifying and rehabilitating the damaged basic infrastructure. The Minister for Vocational Training and Education, Yassin Mirabi, has received the advisor to the Board of Directors of Qatari company Baladna, specialized in agri-food dairy products and juices, Mr. Ali, as part of his visit to Algeria to mark the launch of a joint project concluded between the Qatari company and the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development for the production of milk powder in the province of Adrar. The meeting was an opportunity to examine the means of cooperation, notably with regard to guaranteeing qualified labor in the professional sectors of agriculture, the agricultural food industry, and manufacturing. The two parties discussed the joint working mechanisms concerning the needs of the project in terms of specialties and the resources of the training establishment concerned, the arrangements made for their support and the ways in which training applicants in these fields will be taken into charge, as well as the development of programs relating to these specialties. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has taken part in the 8th meeting of the Arab Ministerial Small Committee in charge of international action to face up to illegal Israeli policies and measures in occupied Al-Quds. Asya Bakar.
The meeting was held ahead of the ministerial meeting of the Council of the League of Arab States at the level of foreign ministers. The meeting of the Arab Ministerial Small Committee centered on reviewing the dangerous and systematic Israeli practices and policies that aim to annex the holy city, empty it of its Palestinian components, and distort its Arab identity. The ministers of the member states of this committee also agreed on a set of practical steps to enhance Arab action at the level of international bodies with the aim of facing up to these policies and practices and addressing them with all possible means. Let's recall that the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, is taking part in the 162nd session of the Arab League Ministerial Council. This session is devoted to the examining of several issues related to the joint Arab action, notably the dangerous developments that the Palestinian cause and the entire region are facing due to the Israeli escalation and the crises and conflicts that threaten security and stability in several Arab countries. On the sidelines of this session, Mr. Attaf will hold bilateral meetings with several of his Arab counterparts as part of the coordination of the steps taken by Algeria at the United Nations Security Council in order to defend the interests of Arab countries and peoples and to advocate for the Palestinian cause being the central cause of the Arab nation.
The UN envoy for the peace process in the Middle East, Tor Westland, has condemned the Israeli airstrikes that hit a humanitarian zone in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, killing 40 people. In a communique, he strongly condemned the murderous attacks carried out by the Israeli army against a densely populated area in Khan Yunis. The UN envoy recalled that the civilians should never be used as human shields, in a clear reference to the Israeli army's claims. Scores of other Palestinians were injured in the attacks launched on tents sheltering displaced in El Mawasi. In this respect, Palestinian sources affirm that banned missiles were used during overnight attacks. The representative of the Palestinian Hamas movement, Youssef Hamdan, here in Algiers, condemned the attack and denounced the international community's failure to force Israel to renounce its acts of violence carried out for more than 11 months against the Palestinian population.
The
Israeli occupation pursued its acts of aggression and its practices, including ethnic cleansing against the civilian population, notably those displaced who sought refuge in tents. The Israeli occupation is lying to justify the unacceptable. The occupation continues to kill and lie because no one forces it to provide evidence about its constant lies and claims. The heinous crime is a direct and continuous result of the U.S. support and the scenes we have been used to for more than 11 months. It's a natural consequence of the impunity of the occupation's criminals. The alliance that supports the occupations and covers up its crimes requires a humanitarian alliance that forces the occupation to account for its crimes. Our blood is not water and our children are not plastic toys whose bodies are torn apart on air and buried under sand while the world watches and counts the dead. The law of force imposed by the occupation could not be faced up by the law alone. We must activate all the means of strength that we possess as Arabs, Muslims, and above all, human beings.
That was the representative of the Palestinian Hamas movement, Youssef Hamdan, here in Algiers.
The president of the 70th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Mr. Denis Francis, held a press conference to share appraisal on key moments of his tenure as president. In his final press briefing, Denis Francis described the session as a truly eventful one. Regarding the recent escalation of violence in the Middle East, he called again for a cessation of violence and the implementation of a ceasefire.
Following the horrifying escalation of violence in the Middle East, the General Assembly took bold action in resuming its 10th emergency special session, and in doing so adopted 3 important resolutions. One on the protection of civilians and upholding legal and humanitarian obligations. Another demanding an immediate ceasefire that all parties comply with their obligations under international law, and the unconditional release of all hostages as well as humanitarian access. And a third, determining that the state of Palestine is qualified for membership of the United Nations and recommending that the Security Council consider the matter favorably. These demands by the General Assembly represent the will of the international community. And as I have routinely said on several occasions, I reiterate these demands forthrightly here today. It is time for the violence in Gaza to stop.
Finally, Francis expressed optimism at the United Nations' resilience despite acknowledging the challenges it faces. On the International Day to Protect Education from Attack, the Norwegian Refugee Council has issued an alarming report saying that In West and Central Africa, more than 14,000 schools have been forced to close due to violence and insecurity as of June 2024, impacting the learning of hundreds of thousands of children across the region. Mariam Barshi.
Across the Sahel countries of Burkina Faso and Mali, as well as Cameroon and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, school closures affected millions of children in 2023 and continue to do so this year. Many of the impacted children are at risk of being recruited by armed groups or exposed to severe protection risks such as child labor, physical violence, and sexual exploitation. The Norwegian Refugee Council's regional director for West and Central Africa, Hassan Hamadou, said education is under siege in West and Central Africa, calling urgently on all parties to conflict to cease attacks on an occupation of our schools and ensure that education is protected and prioritized. In Cameroon, the compounding effects of three concurrent humanitarian crises left 1.4 million school-aged children in dire need of educational assistance in 2023. In the DRC, violence and inter-community tensions have forced the closure of 1,457 schools since the beginning of 2024, affecting over 500,000 students and 12,700 teachers. Armed groups continue to occupy school buildings, using them for military purposes and further disrupting education. On the International Day to Protect Education from Attack, the organization called on the international community, governments and all parties to conflict to take immediate and sustained action to protect education. This includes ensuring the safety of students and teachers and providing adequate funding for education programs in conflict-affected regions.
Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjama, has expressed Algeria's readiness to support global peacekeeping efforts. Speaking at the United Nations Security Council, affirmed Algeria's willingness to share her expertise to prevent conflicts and uphold international peace and security.
Algeria is ready to put at the disposal of the UN and the international community its knowledge, its expertise in the prevention of conflict and in the maintenance of international peace and security.
The Under-Secretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, has said that the United Nations peacekeeping operations need greater political support and resources to carry out their tasks in complete safety at a time when conflicts are becoming more complex and armed groups are increasingly use low-cost technologies such as improvised explosive devices and drones. Addressing members of the Security Council, Jean-Pierre Lacroix said that United Nations operations can only be strong if they have the collective support of nations.
The UN peacekeeping operations can only ever be as strong as the collective support of the UN membership. As geopolitical tensions have mounted, including here in this Council, and amid shifting global and regional dynamics, peacekeeping operations are increasingly unable to rely on member states to act in a strong, unified manner to support peacekeeping efforts or the political processes they are mandated to support. In parallel, conflict is evolving. Peacekeeping missions are increasingly confronting drivers of conflict that have no borders, such as transnational organized crime, the illegal exploitation of natural resources, and the impact of climate change. Non-state actors engaged in these illicit activities are also weaponizing cheap technologies, such as improvised explosive devices and drones, and are propagating disinformation and hate speech. Despite all these challenges, today over 70,000 peacekeepers bravely continue their vital work. Each day they make a difference in protecting civilians, clearing mines and explosive remnants of war, monitoring fragile ceasefires and preventing escalation of hostilities.
That was the Under-Secretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix. The Spanish People's Party has urged the government to set up a special fund dedicated to Sahrawi refugees in the camps as a matter of urgency to help meet their vital needs. Mariam Barshi.
The PPMPs, chaired by Alberto Núñez Feijóo, presented a bill for debate in plenary, warning about the deteriorating living conditions of these refugees whose survival depends largely on international aid, the PPMPs called on their country's government to include this proposal in the next general state budgets. One of the signatories of the proposal, MP Javier Noriega, said that he hopes that it will be presented to the plenary session of Parliament, stressing that the situation of the Sahrawi refugees is completely desperate. According to these MPs, the response to the food emergency in the Sahrawi refugee camps can no longer be delayed. Humanitarian actors are facing enormous challenges in maintaining aid at the level required to meet the needs of the Sahrawi refugees against a backdrop of decreasing humanitarian aid in a world beset by multiple crises. The PP recalled that since November 2023, the World Food Programme has reduced the emergency food rations it delivers to Sahrawi refugees by 30%.
You are listening to Radio Algeria International, and this is the English service.